This is Henry Roots Jackson, one of the most prominent men ever to live in Savannah. He was a Yale graduate and then a very, very prominent lawyer here in Savannah. He was also a prosecutor and a judge and very successful in all those areas. He was also a soldier. During the U.S.-Mexican War, he was a hero at the Battle of Monterey. During the Civil War, he was a general for the Confederate Army. After the Civil War, he served as the U.S. Foreign Minister to Mexico under one president and the U.S. Foreign Minister to Austria under another. And he also wrote 6 books. Very, very prominent man. His monument here is made out of processed red granite. It has a beautiful bronze urn up on top. Henry Roots Jackson, one of our most prominent Savannians. This is, to me, the most beautiful family plot in Bonaventure Cemetery. It sits right out here on the beautiful Wilmington River. And this is a really, really outstanding, prominent man here in Savannah's history. This is Alexander Lawton. Alexander Lawton was a West Point graduate, and then he graduated from Harvard Law School. Became a very, very prominent lawyer here in Savannah. Now, to give you an idea of how successful he was and what type of lawyer he was one of the co-founders of the American Bar Association, and he also served as the president of the American Bar Association. He was also a soldier. During the Civil War, he served as a general for the Confederate Army and was the first quartermaster general for the Confederate Army as well. After the Civil War, he served as the U.S. Foreign Minister to Austria and as the president of the Augusta-Savannah Railroad, building that railroad into one of the finest operations in the South. Alexander Lawton was also a very charitable man. There are buildings all around Savannah dedicated to music and art that he donated money to. He was a big, big fan of music and art and really, really promoted that in Savannah at schools and churches. So he's a real hero and a man of very, very great importance here in Savannah. This is Corrine Elliott Lawton. She was the daughter of Alexander Lawton. They were extremely close. They traveled the world together, going to art museums and to concerts. And like I'd mentioned, Alexander Lawton was very charitable and very supportive of art and music around Savannah. And like I said, they were very, very close and loved going to all different types of art exhibits and museums and concerts. A really, really sad story with her life. She was 31 years old before she got engaged, but died tragically just 2 weeks before her wedding date of yellow fever. The same Italian artist that carved General Lawton's great sculpt of Jesus welcoming people into the gates of heaven carved this piece for his daughter Corrine. This is her in her wedding dress, and she was buried in her wedding dress because she died just a couple of weeks before her wedding. A very, very sad story for her life. Right, this is the Dieter family, one of the most beautiful angels here in Bonaventure. As you can tell, she's dropping rose petals down on the family, which stands for peace and love. And this family suffered a real tragedy. They lost 4 children in a 7-year span to yellow fever. And if you look about halfway down the monument, there's a cross. And then in the corners, there's the likeness of a child's face. Those are the 4 children that they lost during that 7-year span to yellow fever. And again, this is a really sad story, but a really, really beautiful monument here, a beautiful angel. It's made out of Italian marble. And this was carved by John Waltz. John Waltz was a German immigrant who had come over to the United States and was just having a really, really hard time making it up in Philadelphia. And then he came down to Savannah and really found his niche, carving sculpts for cemeteries. He has over 70 pieces in Bonaventure and then several others in the other cemeteries around town. He also has 3 pieces at the National Battlefield in Gettysburg. And John Waltz is buried right here in Bonaventure. Very, very famous and important artist here to Savannah. This is the Theus family, buried here in Bonaventure Cemetery. And the Theus family was very, very important here in Savannah. They owned a jewelry store for several generations here. And so if you bought a ring or a watch or a necklace at one point in time here in Savannah, you might have bought it from the Theus family. And they've got a beautiful, beautiful angel here. I love the pose that she's in. She's in really deep thought. To her left here, she's holding a wreath, which stands for eternal life. And here on the front, you have a passion flower, which stands for peace and love. And then also the urn here in the front of the monument is another Christian symbol, which stands for eternal life. And if you'll notice the cross here in the front, this is Confederate Cross. We've got 382 Confederate soldiers buried in Bonaventure, and we've got 6 Confederate generals buried out here as well. So not only will you see a lot of Victorian history, you'll also see a lot of Civil War history at Bonaventure. All right, this is little Gracie Watson, and this is the most popular, most visited grave in Bonaventure. Little Gracie was just a tremendously popular figure here in Savannah. Her parents ran the Pulaski Hotel here in town. It was really an upscale hotel, very, very popular. There was also a really nice restaurant where a lot of locals would eat. And little Gracie would run around and sing and dance and play the piano and entertain the guests. And in my head, what I really, really picture is like a Shirley Temple type character running around. And like I said, she was just extremely popular. Sadly, tragically, she died at the age of 6 in 1889 of pneumonia. And just really the whole city of Savannah went into mourning. Almost the whole city turned out for her funeral. And her carving has a whole lot of meaning in it. She died just a few days before Easter in 1889, and that's her in her Easter dress. The tree trunk under her right hand is a tree trunk that was cut off, symbolizing a life that was cut off way too soon. The vine that wraps around the tree stands for eternal life. On her left side there are some palms. Those stand for victory over death. And her monument's a cradle monument there. It has a flower growing in the front, and her initials, GW, for Gracie Watson. But a very, very popular figure in Savannah, and like I said, our most popular, most visited grave here at Bonaventure. This is the final resting place of Noble Jones, and Noble Jones is a really, really important person in the history of Savannah and the colony of Georgia. Noble Jones actually came over on the ship Ann with General James Oglethorpe, the very first ship that came over with General Oglethorpe and 144 other British to settle right here in Savannah. Noble Jones was to be the physician of the settlement, but he was a whole lot more than that. He was also a skilled carpenter and a skilled surveyor and a soldier. He was also the owner of Wormslow Plantation and eventually acquired 11 other properties in the area. So he's a very, very wealthy and prosperous landowner. His family has been tremendously influential and successful here in Savannah. Jones Street is named after the family. Keeping up with the Joneses, that term comes from his family due to all the success that they have had. His descendants have been mayors of Savannah, governors of the state of Georgia, U.S. congressmen, U.S. senators. Today there's lawyers, doctors, dentists here in town, all members of the Jones family. So Noble Jones, we owe him a big thank you for all the great influence that he has had on our city over the years. Out here in Bonaventure, you'll see a lot of beautiful old symbols with a lot of Christian and spiritual meaning. This is a resurrection cross. It's a cross that looks like it's lying down on its back, but the actual meaning in this cross is that it's rising up. It's resurrecting, a resurrection cross, just like Christ rose from the dead 3 days after being crucified. So a beautiful Christian symbol. And like I said, you're going to see a lot of beautiful Christian symbols out here in Bonaventure. All right, this is Richard Arnold, very prominent physician here in Savannah. He was a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania Medical School, was one of the founders of the American Medical Association. Very, very prominent doctor here in Savannah. But what he is most known for is being mayor of Savannah when General Sherman came through with the Union Army. Now, General Sherman had burned Atlanta to the ground. Matter of fact, if you were to go to Atlanta today, in downtown Atlanta, you won't find a structure there prior to 1864. Savannah was completely demolished. Then General Sherman made his march to the sea from Atlanta to Savannah, destroying a 30-mile wide path. In today's money, it was $6.5 billion worth of property damage. So of course the people of Savannah, they're scared to death when Sherman arrives. The Confederate Army was in shambles. And so Mayor Arnold did something really, really brave. He went out and met General Sherman right on the outskirts of town, peaceably surrendered the city, offered him a mansion to stay in. It was the Green Meldrum house, which was the most expensive house ever built in Savannah up until the 20th century. It was built in 1850 for $93,000, which would be $3.5 million today. And then he begged General Sherman not to burn the city, and he didn't. He was here for a little over 3 months and then turned north and went through South Carolina, doing more property damage in South Carolina than he did here in Georgia. Now, we can take some things from General Sherman's diary as to why he did not burn Savannah. And the main thing was he was exhausted, and so were his men. If you can think about the mental exhaustion the Union soldiers must have had after destroying so much property, hearing the cries of women and children as their houses, as their farms, their farm animals and their crops were destroyed, it took a real toll on those men. And so they needed some time off. If you're going to take some time off, you wouldn't want to burn that city because you need to be resupplied, you need a place to quarter your men, you need a place that you can rest comfortably. So we were very, very blessed that General Sherman didn't burn Savannah. Today, tourism is our #2 moneymaker. People come to Savannah to enjoy the old downtown and the history and Bonaventure Cemetery. This is probably one of my favorite spots in Bonaventure. This is the Wilbur family and their family plot. So just a beautiful, beautiful angel here. It has a lot of character with the weathering and the Spanish moss hanging around it. It also has some beautiful symbolism. In her left hand, she's holding a wreath, which stands for eternal life. She's also pointing toward heaven. And on her crown, there's a star right there above her forehead, which is a symbol that means heaven. So a lot of beautiful symbolism there. And again, just a lot of beautiful greenery here and mystique and character with the angel there and the Spanish moss. Again, one of my favorite spots here in Bonaventure. This is General Robert Anderson, an outstanding man and an outstanding leader. He was a West Point graduate and was serving in the United States Army. And then the Civil War broke out, so he resigned his position and joined the Confederate Army. He really achieved a lot early in life. He rose to the rank of general at the age of 28, very, very young for a man to become general. Robert E. Lee wrote extensively about General Robert Anderson and his toughness and his courage, his abilities as a soldier, and also about his leadership abilities. And he would go on to use those leadership abilities in some really, really unbelievable ways after the Civil War. After the war was over with, he served as the police chief here in Savannah for 23 years. Really did a great job in that position, really built our police department into one of the finer forces in the United States. Another thing that he really did that was very, very important is he wanted to try to heal the wounds between the North and the South. So he was a regular speaker at West Point, speaking about joining the country back together, the cadets from both the northern and the southern states joining together to be on the same team. Every president from Grant until General Anderson's death invited him to the White House to speak on uniting the country after the Civil War. 2 different presidents appointed him to be the president of the Board of Trustees of West Point. Again, a great, great leader, a great American. You can see a beautiful, beautiful monument here, beautiful bust there on top. I wish I could grow a mustache like that, Beautiful, beautiful mustache. And as you can tell, he died in 1888. A really, really young man. He died at the age of 53 of pneumonia, but he really crammed a lot of success into those 53 years. A cemetery always brings out a lot of emotion and a lot of feelings, a lot of happiness, remembering loved ones and great times that you experience with that person, but also brings out a lot of sadness, the loss of life and just not seeing this person again, the tragedy, the pain that you go through. And this family suffered through some real tragedies. This is the Prendegrast family. And right up here, there's a beautiful angel, and she's writing on a tablet. And she has written Papa's Sweetheart on the tablet. And it's just a really, really sad story. That's little Theodore Prendegrast. He died in 1909. He was just 7 years old. The Prendegrast family just had a hard time. Young Theodore was really, really close with his father. They played together, they hunted and fished together. And it was just a really, really sad time for their family, losing their 7-year-old little boy. One thing that really pulls at my heartstrings is that he had 6 pallbearers, and they were all 7-year-old little boys. So his little buddies were the ones that carried his body to be buried. But a real tragic story for their family, losing a son at 7 years old. And then right here in front of little Theodore is William Prendegrast. And William lived to be 52 years old, but he also died in a very tragic way. He was a very, very successful executive at a company in New York City. And he lived on 5th Avenue, beautiful, beautiful apartment. And one day he fell out of his window from the 14th floor, fell down to the sidewalk there in Manhattan and died. So really tragic way to lose 2 children, one at the age of 7 to cancer, one at the age of 52 to a tragic fall. But like I said, in the cemetery, it brings out a lot of different emotions and feelings, happiness, sadness, and love. And again, really tragic story for this family. Here in Bonaventure, we've got a lot of beautiful symbolism, a lot of beautiful Christian symbols that have a lot of meaning for your life and also for eternity. If you look over here, we have the columns with the urn. Has a lot of Greek influence in it. The columns stand for a life that was lived full of integrity and character, and then the urn stands for eternal life. You'll see a lot of urns here in the cemetery. And then the archway. The archway signifies the gates of heaven. Really, really beautiful symbolism out here in the cemetery, and you'll see that all over here at Bonaventure. This is the Bacon family plot here in Bonaventure. Really, really beautiful family plot. You can see the columns and the urn. The columns stand for a life lived full of integrity and character, and the urn, which stands for eternal life. And this is a great, great story. Right here to my right is Albert Bacon. Albert Bacon was the patriarch of this great family. He fought in the Battle of Gettysburg and was shot in the face. It was a horrible, horrible wound. Gettysburg was the bloodiest battle of the Civil War. So there are Confederate soldiers just pouring in to the little tent hospital that they had. And so soldiers that they thought, you know, they're not going to make it, they were just kind of discarded off to the side. And Albert Bacon was one of those due to the severity of his wound. They didn't think he would live through the day, but he did. And the Confederates, after they retreated, he was captured by the Union Army. Not only did he live through that day, he lived a year and a half after that in a Union prison camp. After the war, he made his way back to Savannah, started a business, A.S. Bacon and Sons Lumber Company. It was ran by several generations of his family and grew into one of the most profitable and best lumber companies in the Southeast. It's a true story of overcoming huge obstacles to become a success in life and pave the way for his family. You know, I think about him a lot, and I think, you know, what was it inside Albert Bacon that the fight, the will to live that got him through that battle, and then also got him through that prison camp for a year and a half? If he dies on that battlefield in Gettysburg, it really changes the path for his family for several generations. You know, also, when he came home from the war with a very, very disfigured face, nobody would have blamed him if he just said, you know what, I'm just going to hide out in the house. But this was a true hero, a man who went after his dreams, a man who fought hard, a man who really, really had an impact, not only on his family, but a lot of people that work for his business and a lot of people here in Savannah. This is Edward Paddleford and his family. Edward Paddleford was one of the wealthiest men ever to live in Savannah, made most of his money off the cotton industry and the shipping industry. And this is a beautiful, beautiful monument here to him. It's called a Steeple Monument. It's made out of Italian marble, solid Italian marble. There's no telling how much this thing weighs. They had to float it down the Wilmington River on a barge and then hook it up to mules on a sled and drag it all the way up here. They had a really elaborate pulley system that they had to use to get it up in place. It's got some really, really beautiful things on it. First of all, you'll notice it has raised lettering, which was very uncommon during that day and time. So there was a lot of tedious work to carve and chisel that out. So like I said, with the raised lettering, the solid Italian marble, not only is this a very heavy piece, but a very, very expensive piece. Now, Edward Paddleford, like I said, is one of the wealthiest men here in Savannah. He did have a lot of tragedy in his life. He lost 3 sons in the Civil War, so quite a sacrifice for him and his family. But he was a very charitable man here in Savannah. He donated a lot of money to Bethesda, which is an orphanage that was founded by George Whitfield here in Savannah. It's the oldest orphanage in the United States. Today it's Bethesda School for Boys, has a full academic program and a full athletic program, and serves a lot of children here in Savannah. But Edward Paddleford was a very, very big part of donating a lot of money to that school and really getting it going in a good direction. So this is the family plot of Johnny Mercer. Johnny Mercer's a favorite son of Savannah. He was a singer and a songwriter. He wrote over 1,000 songs. He was nominated for 19 Academy Awards and won 4 Academy Awards. He's also the co-founder of Capitol Records, and he wrote 6 Broadway plays. So he was a very, very accomplished man in the music and entertainment industry. Some of his more popular lyrics and songs are recognized here in the family plot. Moon River is probably his most famous song, but one of the greatest entertainers in American history during the 20th century. And again, a favorite son of Savannah, Johnny Mercer.